Today we're going to be discussing something that could potentially save your life. We're going to talk about falls amongst people with hearing loss and prevention strategies. Here on the panel with me, on my far left, your far right, is Nikki Clark. She is a lifelong hearing aid wearer and our Director of Operations at Corvallis Hearing Center. On my right is my right arm. Her name is Kylie, and she has been with us now. She's the new kid on the block. How many months? 3?
Almost 4.
3 months, almost 4 months now. Next to me is my friend of over 20 years, Larry. He's going to be talking about fall prevention because he's done a pretty good job on himself preventing falls. And on the far left is Lois. She is one of our patients at our clinic and an exceptional example of what can happen if you follow some of the strategies we will be discussing today. So, with that, let's move on with this presentation. Here's how we're going to organize this presentation. Number one, we're going to answer the question, are falls a big deal? Because people come to my clinic quite often and they speak rather matter-of-factly, oh yes, I've had 2 falls in the last 4 months. Well, I get concerned and they look at me rather strange. Well, you know, I blacked my eyes, but I was really fine. But see, those are lucky people. That shouldn't be your norm of behavior. You shouldn't say, yeah, I've had a couple of falls in the last 4 months, but I'm just not that concerned because I really didn't get hurt that badly. So we're going to be talking. We're going to be talking about whether falls are in fact a big deal. Secondly, if they are, why are they? Okay, number 3, we're going to talk about, are there any hope of avoiding these falls? Are there things you can do that would decrease the likelihood you're going to have a fall? Number 4, we're going to have a discussion with some of the members of this panel who have done quite well for themselves in avoiding falls and talk about some of the strategies they have used for a long time. So, without further ado, let's get to it, addressing the question of whether falls are in fact a big deal. Well, I sort of gave you a sense that it was already, and that brings us to our next slide.
So, this is from Dr. Frank Lin. He did a study back in, what date is that there?
2012.
2012 there, and he found a very strong relationship between hearing loss and fall. Specifically, hearing loss tied was a 3-fold risk for falling with hearing loss. He was not the only one to notice this relationship between falls and hearing loss. In this year here, 2009, so in 2009, another study was published as a predictor of falls for with hearing loss. The next one was hearing loss contributes to balance and difficulties in both younger and older adults. And this study was done in 2018 or 19. I can't see that last number.
1-8.
1-8. 12 eligible slides studies were identified. The odds of falling were 2.39 times greater among older adults with hearing loss than older adults with normal hearing.
Let me just say a word about this. The highest level of scientific evidence in the medical and scientific community in general is what's called a meta-analysis of studies. In other words, they look to see, are they any good? Were they published in refereed medical journals? And then they take a look at, so what's the consensus amongst them? So this is a powerful study in that they looked at 12 different studies that all said the same thing. Hearing loss and falls are strongly related. And it varies depending on which study you average, but they said over 200% likelihood, 239% likelihood that your hearing loss is going to make you more prone to falling down.
Okay, so every published study that meets scientific muster says hearing loss greatly increases the risk of falling. So why are the falls so strongly associated with hearing loss, you may ask?
Because this is a little lesson on the anatomy and physiology of the hearing and balance system. You see, if you look at the hearing and balance system, the first thing you learn as a undergraduate student at University of Arizona Medical School is that they're all in the same bag. The hearing and balance system are in the same container. So, let's take a look in greater detail at that. Next slide. You can see that over there on the bottom is the balance
Quickly
system.
memorize the screen, people. It keeps shutting out. Just memorize it.
And below that is the hearing mechanism, all tied together. And in fact, next slide. If you look at the cells that make up the hearing and balance system, they look very much the same. Over on the left, you see the balance system cells, and over on the right, you see the hearing cells. The only difference really between them in morphology and in the way they look is that the balance sensors have little rocks on the top of them, whereas the hearing sensors don't. But other than that, they pretty much look the same. So, to repeat, balance there, hearing there, all in the same bag. So, next, let's put this into action and see how it works.
Both hearing and balance occur within the ear. In hearing, sound waves pass from the outer ear into the auditory canal. They strike the eardrum, making it vibrate. These vibrations travel to the middle ear, setting into motion three tiny bones, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. The vibrations continue through the cochlea and deep into the inner ear, which contains a fluid reservoir. As fluid ripples across membranes, it stirs tiny hairs connected to nerve endings. The stimulated nerve endings carry impulses into the brain, where they are interpreted as sound. Also located in the inner ear is the equilibrium or balance center. The center sends continuous messages about the body's position to the brain. This information helps us maintain balance.
So in the ear we go with sound. It sets into motion the eardrum. That's that orange thing. You can see it vibrating. Connected to the eardrum are three little bones. The first one is called the hammer. You'll see it vibrating here in just a second. There we go. The next one's called the anvil, and the last is the stirrup. And you can see that that causes a fluid disturbance in that little snail shell, and in there are those cells I was talking about that are bent by the sounds. So, you can see that's where hearing is, but at the same time, it's going to show you up above here is the balance system. And that system acts by those little rocks I was talking about getting bent when you rotate in one direction or the other. The weight of the rocks pulls those cells downward, showing you that you're moving from a vertical plane. So they're all in the same bag, they all look the same, they have different functions, but they're all together in one big happy family. Next slide. So, what happens to the area of hearing is likely to affect the area of balance. For example, a high fever, such as comes from meningitis. If you go to the schools for the deaf, you'll see that many of the people who are there got there from meningitis, and they not only have a complete hearing loss or a very severe hearing loss, but they have lost their balance. When deaf children a lot of times play baseball and look up to catch a fly, they'll fall backwards because they have no more visual orientation, and their inner ears, their balance system, and their hearing system are not working. So if they look up at the sky, they can't tell if they're upright or falling forward or backwards. So they'll often fall backwards as they look up in the sky. We had an assistant that when she would walk in the dark, she looked like she was drunk. She kept falling off the sidewalk because she had extensive damage to her hearing mechanism. She had extensive damage to her balance mechanism from a high fever as a baby. So my point is, one thing that affects hearing will likely affect balance too. That's why this strong relationship exists. Following along, yes?
And when my hearing aid is out and I get up in the dark and try and walk to my bathroom, sometimes I'm kind of like leaning to a certain side and I'm off balance. And I haven't fallen down, but I could see where I could fall if I wasn't careful.
Now, what about poor circulation? Poor circulation affects the hearing system and the balance system. Again, the why of that one is explained in a slide coming up here. And you see, if you follow this channel of the arteries throughout the body, there are lots of what they call collateral branches, a lot of different roads for most of the organs of the human body. So if one little artery gets blocked, there are other ones that it can still use to get to the organ and provide oxygen. That is not true for the inner ear where the hearing and balance mechanism live. They do not have many roads, they have one. So if anything ever happens to your circulation, like a blockage in that little road, you'll wake up with tremendous dizziness and tremendous hearing loss all of a sudden. So what will they do? You should go to the emergency room immediately, because studies have shown you've only got 48 hours before that becomes a permanent damage. And they're going to try to open up that channel again and get the oxygen back to that inner ear so that your hearing and balance will come back. So I'll tell all your friends, sudden hearing loss that's not earwax related, accompanied by balance problems, particularly dizziness, vertigo, get to the emergency room. Get them to give you prednisone and see if you can get that system working again. But cardiovascular problems are going to create problems with hearing to a much greater extent and problems with balance to a much greater extent. So again, you can see how this is all tied together. Hearing loss and balance, cardiovascular integrity, any insults to the system is going to affect hearing and balance in many instances. Next slide. When you look at diabetes, you'll see there's a 200% increase in likelihood of hearing loss. What's that all about, you ask? Well, again, think about people with diabetes. They lose circulation in the most peripheral parts of their body. Fingers, toes. It's not uncommon for people to have a lot of toe problems that have diabetes. They're getting very poor circulation. Sometimes it even gets gangrenous and they have to have them cut off. Again, anything that affects peripheral circulation, like your toes, is going to have a disproportionate effect on your balance and hearing, because that little road is much poorer fed than all the rest of the body organs, and your feet and your legs for that matter. So if you're having problems with numbness in the feet, you might suspect you're having problems with your hearing and balance too.
I have diabetic neuropathy in both feet, and I have a big balance problem.
Yes.
Repeat it,
I
Ron.
can't feel my feet.
Funny you bring that up. We're going to go to that research right now, because thank you, yes. For those of you who are on the sound system, she said she has peripheral neuropathy in both feet and is much more prone to falling. And yes, that is a major risk factor, which is, I think, the next slide. So to summarize, insults to the hearing system often result in insults to the balance system, and helps explain the strong relationship between hearing loss and falls. Next, there's more, yes. Association of hearing impairment with frailty. This is crazy. People with hearing loss tend to be more frail than people that don't have hearing loss, that are equally matched in all other risk factors. because we've kind of hit on some of this, cardiovascular integrity is going to give you a hearing loss. Bad cardiovascular circulation is going to give you a hearing loss more likely than someone who has good circulation. So it shouldn't be so surprising, but yes, those adults who have hearing impairment, on average, are more frail than people who don't have hearing loss but have all other equally matched risk factors. And they're more prone to falls because, and this doesn't take much figuring, if you're really weak, you can fall over. I used to have a professor at University of Arizona who had, this was going to be really foreign to these two because they don't remember when polio was an issue, but he had polio and he had post-polio syndrome. And he said to me as we were walking along at University of Arizona one day, he said, this wind's about 12 miles an hour right now, and I can stand up in this, but if it blows any harder, it'll blow me over. Frailty and falls are hand in hand, my friends, and hearing loss and frailty go hand in hand. So we better be talking about something that addresses frailty as well as cardiovascular integrity. Next slide. So yes, hearing loss and frailty are associated with falls. And it's fairly obvious. If you look at 102,130 community-dwelling older adults, older than 65 years of age, 33,503 who have had a fall, they took a look at these group of studies, and they found that meta-analysis, remember that's the highest level of scientific evidence, looking at all these different studies, revealed that compared with robust older adults, frail older adults demonstrated the greatest risk for falls, followed by pre-frail, meaning that you're not so weak that you're going to be blown over like my old professor, but you're on your way to that. So even a little weakness can create a fall risk. Now, this is a problem in Denmark where they have a pretty good health system. In fact, they're some of the healthiest people in the world. 31% of the people admitted to hospitals had a fall. About a third of the people in a hospital had a fall in Denmark. But here's the problematic thing about that study. 67% of those 31% of people, over half of them, almost two-thirds, more than two-thirds of them, their physician never did anything about checking into their physical therapy needs or did any further testing about falls, and certainly without the testing, you're not going to get any rehab. So the chances, if you're in a very good healthcare system like the Danish one, of getting a physician referral after you've had a fall are not good. Actually, you have a better odds of playing single card blackjack in Las Vegas, and not many people win there. Next slide. Now, this group out of Brazil addressed how do falls usually happen? Well, a whole lot of them happen in the bedroom. You already said that. You get up in the night, it's dark. You're off balance. You've got hearing problems. You've got balance problems. You can't tell without a visual reference if you're upright. See, that's the thing. I keep going back to this visual reference. That's why deaf people have trouble in the dark. If you can't see it, your inner ear won't tell you where you are because your rocks are not working anymore like we were describing. So you have to be able to see. So this is going to suggest down the road some things I'm going to tell you about fall prevention. But you have to, when you have a hearing loss, be able to see in the dark, because your inner ear isn't giving you good signals anymore about where you are in space. So, 85% of these people that had falls just fell from standing up for no apparent reason, getting back to that frailty issue. 60% lost their balance, 54% had scratches and bruises. Well, they were the lucky ones, my friends, because the next slide addresses what happens if it's a little more serious than that.
Falls are the main cause of TBI, of brain injury. And this really surprised Ron and I. We thought it was going to be motor vehicle or, something more severe. But no, falls account for 35.2%, where motor vehicles only 10%. And TBIs, brain injuries, may signal the end of your independence. I don't know if you know someone who's gotten a really bad car wreck or a fall or some type of injury that caused this, and they don't have their independence anymore. They have to have someone take care of them and help them through their day-to-day life. And it can also, in some cases, end your life due to that brain injury.
And I might also mention epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, highly related to traumatic brain injury. So if you really don't want to go down that path, you don't want to be falling and hitting your head. And strange, and I can explain this in some detail. In fact, Kylie was asking me about this before we started. Why are people always hitting their heads? Why is this head hitting such a thing? And I can explain it. It has to do with a reflex we have. You know, we have a knee-jerk reflex. In the ear, we actually have a middle ear reflex. We measure it when you come to see us as a measure of the neural integrity of your system. But you also have something called a parachute reflex. And I used to exemplify this reflex quite well when I played in band. I was a trumpet player, so they put us up on the high risers. So we'd be playing along, and we'd be leaning back in our chairs. But if you got a little too far back in your chair, the back leg would go off the riser. So then you would throw open your arms like this, the parachute reflex, and everybody would come down with you, because I would hit my two friends next to me, and they would do their parachute reflex, and we could clear the whole riser when somebody would fall over, because we had the parachute reflex. But my friends, after age 65, you do not. And therein lies the problem. You can't get those arms out quick enough. You're going to almost unavoidably hit your face or head. My mother blacked her eyes hitting a table because there was no parachute reflex. It's gone as we age. So, what I'm trying to say about this is you have to be very careful of these traumatic brain injuries, because you're highly at risk for them.
And my 93-year-old Grammy, she tripped over her feet and could not parachute fast enough, and black eye, she looked like she was in a bar fight. Poor thing. So you got to be careful. And every second of every day in the United States, an older adult falls, making it the #1 cause of injury among older adults.
And death.
And death. Let's see, there's 29 million falls
In 2016.
in 2016. That's 7 million injuries. $31 billion cost to Medicare due to just falls alone. So don't ignore fall. Tell your doctors and follow the guidelines we provide in the next section.
Which, by the way, brings us to, what can we do about it? You know, this is all terrible news we've been giving. You don't have a parachute reflex. Your inner ear is damaged, so as you get your hearing loss, your balance is gone too. This is all bad news. And on top of that, if you're not doing something to avoid frailty, you're more likely to fall, and your hearing loss makes you more likely to be frail. So this is a vicious circle we're talking about. But I've got some good news for you, and that's what we're going to do now. Starting with Mayo Clinic. They've been really concerned about this falling thing for a long time, and they came up with a series of suggestions, and if you can see that, you have passed your eye test for today. But fortunately, I got it right here in front of me, and I know what I want to say about it anyway. They gave a series of relatively simple suggestions, things you can do that will keep you from falling down. And let's start with the first one. Tell your doctor. Talk with your doctor. First, about your medications. A lot of the medications we take, particularly those for blood pressure. Anybody here not on blood pressure medicine, not including these two? Good for you. Good for you. I didn't raise my hand, by the way. And neither Sherry. That's great. Good for you. Well, Tell your doctor about your medicines. Talk with them about, are any of these making me so prone to fall? I seem to be dizzy all the time. And some of them, particularly the blood pressure ones, are highly linked to that. Also, some of the antidepressants and painkillers, highly related to falling down, making you dizzy. So talk with your doctor and have them check over the meds. Personally, I just go to rxlist.com and they show all the side effects of every medicine, so you can just type in what you're taking and it'll take you to these side effects, and you'll be amazed how many medicines are in that list of things that make you dizzy. So, step one, talk with your doctor. Also, talk about the times you almost fell. Kylie and I will ask, have you had any falls in the last year? No. I stumbled, but I managed to recover. Okay, well, that's good, but still. Talk even about those little almost falls you had. Talk about any eye problems you're having, because visual problems can also create problems. If you're having dizziness, mention that to your physician. And if you're having peripheral neuropathy or you feel sudden muscle weakness, talk with your physician about this. Number 2, keep moving. Now, they give you a fairly watered down version of what you ought to be doing. They say, do some walking, do some water aerobics, do Tai Chi. All good advice. I have no problem with that. But really, that's not going to get you where 2 of the people on this panel are today. And I'm going to have them talk with you a little bit about that in just a minute. But these suggestions that Mayo Clinic is giving, I think, are based on doctors facing reality. They always say to their patients, you should work out some. You should exercise more. A little activity would be good for you. But they have found time and time again in their entire careers that maybe 2% of the people who heard that did that. So I don't really blame doctors for being low-key about this. Okay, a little bit of water aerobics, do a little walking. They told my mother, for example, try to get up every hour and walk for 5 minutes. Okay, that's better than nothing, but I don't think it's going to get her to where some of the people on this panel are. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted? Oh, yeah. And if you're concerned about doing physical exercise for fear you might have a fall, talk with your doctor. Hopefully they will refer you somewhere where you can get some good assistance, like to a physical therapist. Number 3, no high heels, sorry. No stocking feet at night. No floppy shoes. Don't wear shoes that encourage you to fall down. Last night we went to a concert and Elizabeth was wearing these really high heels and she had to be helped down the stairs, and she's 50 years old. So those shoes are not designed for people with poor balance. Number 4, remove home hazards. For example, boxes, newspapers, electrical cords, phone cords that are in the way. Get them out of the way. Don't become a hoarder. Don't have stuff piled up to the everywhere you look, because it'll trip you. Coffee tables, magazine racks, plant stands, move them from high traffic areas. Secure loose rugs. Better yet, get rid of your rugs. They are the root of all evil when it comes to falls. You're going to trip over those things. Get them out of your house. Go to just plain floors. But when you do that, if you spill anything, get it off immediately or you'll be on the floor. When I was a 17-year-old, I took a job at Jackson Lake Lodge. And for some reason, they made me the vegetable chef entremetier. I didn't know what that was. I know nothing about cooking. And they asked me to make mashed potatoes one day. And they had this great big 25-gallon thing that you would put the potatoes and the milk and the butter in. And then they had these 2 big blades that were like airplane propellers that would mash the potatoes. But what they didn't tell me, and I never thought to ask, was there was a gear shift on that thing, so it had 3 speeds. And it would go from slow to a little bit faster to a little bit faster. But for whatever reason, the last person who was using it left it on high. So when I hit the go button, those potatoes flew to the ceiling and hit the ceiling. Then they fell back down, not exactly in the pot anymore. So now we've got a concrete floor, tile floor, and I've got all these servers coming in trying to get their trays of food, but they're all falling down because potatoes on a tile floor is a horrible thing, and there's no way you can get them up, come to find out. They should make glue out of that stuff. But the point is, if you spill something on the floor, it creates a tremendous falling hazard, even for 18, 19-year-olds. They were all on the ground. It wasn't a pretty sight. Let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, clean. And then use non-slip mats in your bathtub and in your showers, because that's another major place to fall down.
Another thing.
Yes.
Pets.
Yes.
If you have pets,
They're evil.
they move around and you can't even sometimes realize that they've moved.
Yes, she said pets are the root of all evil when it comes to tripping. Cats particularly. If they want to be fed, they purposely get between your legs and trip you. Number 5, light up the living space. All of it. Night lights in your bedroom or a flashlight right by your bed so you never get up in the dark, because there is a great danger of falling. Clear path to all light switches, but really, have a flashlight right by your bed or a light right by your bed. Store flashlights in easy-to-find places. Get outdoor lights on sidewalks, because there's another falling opportunity. Clear paths to light switches. Light up the place. And then finally, handrails for both sides of the stairways. Non-slip treads on bare wood steps. Grab bars for the shower and tub. Plastic seat for the shower or tub, so you're not having to stand up when you take a shower, because there's another opportunity. You close your eyes when you're washing your hair and you can't see anymore, and you've got balance problems, so you fall down. Have a plastic seat so you can sit while you shower.
And I know these things aren't exactly attractive in your home, but it's better than falling down, having a brain injury due to that, or, death, breaking a hip. None of that's going to be fun. So definitely do this to help you.
Which brings us to, is there anything else? Well, yes, I think so. I, in fact, have written a book about it. And let me tell you a little bit about this book. Back when I was 14, I was the weakest kid at Kaysville Elementary School, and we had to do push-ups. And the weakest kid in the school was alleged to be someone named Doug, and he did more push-ups than I did when we were in gym. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm weaker than Doug. This is not good. So it got me to thinking I'd better do something about it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But let's go first to the Mayo Clinic, point number 2. Like I said, this is a somewhat watered down version. They're saying do some walking. My cardiologist said 5 minutes of walking every hour. Well, okay, that's some.
Better than nothing.
Better than nothing. Anything is better than nothing. And Jack LaLanne has something he said about that I'll get to in a minute. But it can go a long ways towards fall prevention. If you've been avoiding physical activity because you're afraid you'll fall, talk to your doctor, because there are places you can go, and I'm going to talk about some of them today, that will really help you with your exercise program in a safe manner. Now, it's all good advice, but it ignores some critical variables that would make you safer. It's like saying, I want to go to Kabul, Missouri, and I said, okay, well, go east. Well, there's a lot more steps to it than just going east. You could end up anywhere when you go east until you hit the coast of the East Coast. So you need more information if you're really going to do this well. And one of my bodybuilding friends really took this to heart, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I'm saying is, and I made up this little pyramid here, define your goals for fall reduction. And I made this little pyramid. It's composed of 4 different levels of possibility. Now, for most of you, if all you're saying is, all I want to do is not fall down and nothing more, what I just said about Mayo Clinic is perfect for you, because they gave you a lot of things you can do with minimal effort that will decrease the likelihood of falls. That's great. I'm all for that. And each step up the pyramid, you're going to have to remember all that anyway. But still, I think some of us here aspire to something more than just not falling down, period. And that's going to require a little bit more than that 10 minutes of daily walking with a cane or walker as needed, and the grab bars on the tub and toilet, and clearing and lighting all walkways indoors and out, and sensible shoes, and talking with your doctor about medicine. You're going to have to go a little more than that if that is in fact your goal above that. So let's take a look at goal number 2. What if you want to avoid falls but able to get through the day without having to take a 4-hour nap? Well, there's some things you can do about that. For example, you're going to have to add more than just a 10-minute walk, maybe 25 minutes worth of walking, and a minimal exercise program like Tai Chi as suggested by Mayo Clinic. But you're going to have to also pay a little more attention to what you eat. One of my family members lives on 7-Up and potato chips, and she's 80 some odd years old. That's not good. It doesn't really give you the things you need to do well. Next. So, the question is, am I trying to tie diet to physical fitness? Yeah, I am, and the research supports that very well. In fact, I think the New York Times had a very interesting article, and I'm going to read some of it here. The title, "Our Food is Killing Too Many of Us in the United States." And some of the things they said I think are worth repeating. Let's go to the next slide. For example, almost half the entire adult population of the United States have prediabetes or diabetes. Almost 1 out of 2 have prediabetes or diabetes. Cardiovascular disease affects 122 million people and causes roughly 840,000 deaths every year. I mean, Larry and I were raised in the Vietnam era, and we remember, the thousands of people who were killed, but 840,000 deaths every year from heart disease? This is a real problem. And about 2,300 deaths every single day in this country from heart disease. 3 in 4 adults in this country are overweight or obese, morbidly obese. In fact, when you look at it, there are more Americans who are sick than are well in this country. In 2016, a study published examined 198 people with type 2 diabetes to determine if they had peripheral neuropathy. We already talked about this. They evaluated their risk for falls, and guess what? Just what we already said. Next slide. People with peripheral neuropathy had the highest likelihood of falls because you can't tell where your feet are. I've had Kylie tape down all the wires around here so none of us can trip over them, because some people with peripheral neuropathy would not feel that they were stepping on a cord, and that can be a serious fall hazard. Next. They say that poor diet is the leading cause of mortality. This is back to the New York Times article. In the United States, causing more than 500,000 deaths per year. Just 10 dietary factors estimated to cause nearly 1,000 deaths every day. 10 things you could do that would prevent those diet-related deaths. So, what are they? Well, you could include nutrition in all electronic health records. I'm not sure I'm on board with that, and I'll talk more about it in just a minute. You could update the medical training of doctors, pushing them to learn more about nutrition. Again, I'm not sure I'm on board with that. You could offer patient prescription programs for healthy produce. Okay, I'm good with that, but I'm not sure your doctor should be the one to have to do that. And for the sickest people, home-delivered, medically tailored meals. Great idea. Just that would save $9,000 in healthcare costs per patient per year. So what we eat has a profound effect on how we turn out. And 7-Up and chips probably aren't going to be on that list. Next slide. I believe you're there. I believe we put too much pressure on doctors. They have to deal with a whole host of things that you bring in. I see patients in our clinic that have 3 or 4 pages of medicine alone. They have 3 or 4 pages of diseases and disorders they have. Don't make your doctor be your nutritionist. That is not fair to them. Next slide. And here's a little survey I'd like to know. This is the food pyramid. It's actually the one from Harvard, so it's a little different than the FDA food pyramid. But is there anybody in this room who has never seen the food pyramid? Good. I was expecting you to not raise your hands, because everybody's seen this. Is there anybody in this room that doesn't know that smoking's not good for you? Okay. I just wanted to be sure we were all on the same page. So we know this, right? We know it just like cigarettes. We know that a diet of 7-Up and potato chips probably isn't a good idea. We can all agree to that. And we know it. So telling us that your doctor has to be the one to tell you, sorry, you can't live on 7-Up and chips and be okay. That's nonsense. We have to have some personal responsibility in this. Next. What if you want to do even more, though, than just avoid exhaustion and a 5-hour nap every day? What if you want to walk up that pyramid one more step? Well, you're going to have to do all the same things we discussed, but now you're going to have to add a little bit of resistance training. Yes, my friends, weight training. You're going to have to increase your strength. You're going to have to perfect your sleeping patterns, getting at least 7 to 9 hours. No less and no more, by the way. 7 to 9 hours of good sleep. If you have sleep apnea, you're going to have to address that. If you're having a light on that keeps you awake, you're going to have to stop that. If you're playing your TV and find that it wakes you up every few hours, stop it. And follow that food pyramid and attend to high quality protein intake, because as we age, we get less effective at assimilating protein. And that's the basis of muscular strength. So now we're going to do a little of the Harvard food pyramid. You can see at the bottom, the thing they liked best was not food, it was exercise, because they think that has more effect than anything. I have a friend, Pax, that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, who before he had his heart attack and his quadruple bypass was eating a pound of cheese every day. But he said to me after that, you know, Ron, there's no amount of exercise that can make up for a high-fat diet. There is no amount of exercise you can do that will protect your heart, because he had set all kinds of records. He was the one who started the marathon in San Francisco where he lived. He was the one who swam from Alcatraz to the main shore of San Francisco in December without a wetsuit, pulling a barge. I mean, this guy was doing crazy stuff, but he had a heart attack, a major heart attack that nearly killed him. Killed a lot of his heart, a lot of necrotic tissue. So the thing at the bottom of the pyramid, the thing you should be doing most in this pyramid from Harvard, is exercise, not food. But next to it, they have vegetables, healthy fats, whole grains, moving up a little bit, nuts and seeds, fish and poultry. You'll notice those red meats and those processed meats, they're at the very tip of the pyramid, along with sugar and the potato chips that my family member lives on. So this shows you how to moderate those amounts of food that aren't good for you and the things you should be doing. Okay? So, that being said...
And I know, I love my bread and pasta.
For most everyone, I bet 99.9% of the people in this country, what I've said right here, if they'd just do that and nothing more, they would have a pretty good outcome. And, next slide, that is exactly, I believe, and I'm sort of guessing here, exactly what Lois does. Lois is 85 years young. And every time I see someone who comes to my clinic who doesn't have a walker, that's in their 80s, and gets up out of a chair just like I do, and has no apparent risk of falling, I ask them, how do you do it? And they always say exactly the same thing. And I need to tell you something. I have no affiliation with what she's about to say. I haven't advised her on what to say, but every 85-plus-year-old who walks well without a walker, has no fall risk, when I ask them, how do you do it? They say to me, I do this. And what is it, Lois?
Exercise.
Yes, where?
Well, I'm a woman and I like to talk, so I begin my days by walking with my walkie-talkie group, and we walk for half an hour to an hour. And then I come home, and 3 days a week I go to the Fitness Over 50 gym, where I walk an additional half an hour on the treadmill and then do several other exercises. But probably the exercise that I do the most is with the piece of foam, and specially made for balance. And I stand on that foam and close my eyes and just try to keep my balance with my eyes closed. And then I open my eyes and stand on each foot, try to keep my balance for 30 seconds, stay right close to the counter, so, if I can't make it, I can put my hands down. And then I do a couple other balance exercises. So I think those balance exercises are probably the number one thing.
Yes, and like I said, I have no affiliation with these people, but when I ask that question, they always say Fitness Over 50. I don't know where it is. I have a vague idea of where it is. I don't know who runs it. I don't know what they're doing, but I do know that the people that come to my clinic and do well, that's where they came from. So, and tell me a little bit about Fitness Over 50. Why do you think it's a good idea? Why do you go there so often?
Well, there again, being a woman, it's also a very sociable place. And I've made new friends while I was there. And I noticed that I've been in other gyms, and you go in and everyone is sort of just singly doing their whatever they do. And at Fitness Over 50, they have, 3 or 4 trainers always there that you can ask questions of, and they'll give you directions. And you also have the, hi, Karen, hi, and you just feel connected with each other. And I think that's very important, too.
I agree completely. In fact, in my book, I have a whole section on picking the right gym. By the way, here's my training buddy right here.
Also, we did manage to walk into Fitness Over 50, and we did steal some brochures. So if you guys want some, there are a few brochures over there.
And Lois, I know this is sort of a ridiculous thing to ask, but could you stand up and sit down, please? So if that's the way you want to do it when you're 85, that's what you should be doing, because trust me, I see hundreds of people every year who are 85 and above. There are maybe 7 or 8 of them who can do that. And when I ask them, they always say Fitness Over 50.
I can second that, because I'm going to Fitness Over 50.
Yeah.
And I'm going through their little routine that they gave me just for my specific problem.
Yes.
With balance. And haven't been there long, but I'm just starting out, but I can see that already this is going to help me out.
And I got someone here on the front row who's a Fitness Over 50 fan too. It seems to work. Like I said, I have no affiliation with them. I'm not trying to promote their business. I'm just telling you that over the years, I keep hearing the same thing. Next. What if you want even more, though? I said this is what she's doing would be great for, I think, 99.9% of the people in this country. They'd be so much better off. We'd save so much health care money. They'd have such a better lifestyle. This traumatic brain injury thing, I just can't stress it enough. It's the end of you. And that's the good news. It gets uglier when you really get in and look at these folks and how they're living now. So, billions of dollars could be saved just by modification of diet and what she just said, a social group that gets together 3 times a week at this place. But what about that other 1/10 of 1% who want to be the absolute best they can? This picture was taken of me, 69, I would have been 17 years old, and then 60 years old. And it just shows that really you can sort of maintain the same level of physical fitness if you just do the right things and avoid some of the wrong things. And boy, Larry and I can talk about those because, personally speaking, I've tried most all of them and made a lot of mistakes along the way. But it's going to take a lot more serious commitment. And by the way, if you think you're of one of those 1/10 of 1% or would like to even think about what it entails, I do have books here. If you want one, Corley will have them for you. But let's get to the gist of what I want to say about this on the next slide. The best you can be, regardless of age. Well, my friend Pax, there's a picture of him at 80 years of age. He wrote a book about it, and he started, and you can see up there in the right corner was him when he was getting his quadruple bypass, and a third of his heart tissue was dead because of the massive heart attack he had. And on the next slide, you can see his fantastic place called the Body for the Ages Healthy Aging Facility. It's on, as you can see, the corner of Bush and Octavia in San Francisco. And he's quite a character, but he's a real guru of reaching beyond just minimal function as we age. And so did my friend Jack LaLanne, who also has a book, Revitalizing Your Life Over 50. But you know, some of the things Jack was doing, his program ran from 55 to 55 to 85. 30 years he was saying things that nobody had ever said before. And let's take a look at some of them, because they've really stood the test of time. Number one, eat more fruits and vegetables. He used to say, if, let's see, how do you say it? If man made it, spit it out. If God made it, eat it. Number two, exercise no matter what your age. Now, this was really controversial back in the 60s and 70s. Oh, my goodness. What if you have a heart condition? Well, I got a heart condition. I got a real heart condition. But if I didn't, my cardiologist wouldn't say things to me like, you're getting better, but I don't know why you shouldn't be. No matter what your age, exercise. Jack said everybody, and he proved it. He got a bunch of 80-year-olds together, and he doubled their strength in 6 months. So it's not written in stone that you're going to become progressively more frail and have falls. It's just not true. Barring neurological degenerative diseases or a host of other things that might prevent you from doing anything, it's possible to increase your strength at any age. And he said do it by weightlifting. And boy, this was really controversial. Even for women, you know, it was rumored that women shouldn't do this because it will destroy all their feminine characteristics and cause internal problems. That's all nonsense. But he was saying it back when the whole medical community was saying, oh, that's dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that. Number four, use simple equipment. Not everybody's going to do what Larry and I do. We go to a gym you're 5 days a week. I go every other day. But not everybody's going to do that. So Jack realized that, and he said, you know, there's a whole lot of things you can do at home, and I can tell you they work because that's how I started. I lived in a little town of Kaysville, Utah. There was no gym there. It was unheard of. A gym, what is that? I was 14 years old and the weakest kid in the school, like I said. So I started doing push-ups. And the really depressing part about that story is the first day I tried, I could only do like 15, and Doug had done 17. So then the next day I thought, well, I'm going to exceed these 15 because I'm not going to have that. I could only do 13 that day. But then, as the days went by, it turned to be 30, then it turned to be 50, then 70, then 90, then 120. And I got to thinking, you know, this could take all day now. I've got to find some other way. But what was happening was kind of interesting. My shirts didn't fit anymore. They were too tight on me. And I thought, well, that's great. What if I did some of these other things he suggested, like these lower back exercises, like this getting up from a chair without assistance, like these dips on the back of a chair? What if if I could build everything just like I have my chest now? Wouldn't that be great? And come to find out, it really was, and it really worked. It makes exercising possible for everyone because everybody has a chair and everybody has a floor. So that's really all you need to follow that simple exercise. And then finally, I like this, he said the only way you can hurt your body is to not use it. And he showed it until he was 92 years of age and died of pneumonia. And these principles are embodied in my friend Larry, who, next slide, is one of the most muscular men in the gym at his age, and by far the strongest of his age group, and down to the 20-year-olds, stronger than most of them. In fact, he had the Oregon bench press record just a few years ago, so don't believe that this can't work for you when you're 78 years old. So Larry, what makes you different from the other 70-plus-year-olds?
I like to exercise. I'll give you a little bit of background. I did 23 years in the military and retired, and then I got into the post office as a letter carrier, and being a letter carrier, on a walking route, I carried a satchel all day, and it got heavy, so I decided I'd start working out to build my shoulders up. So I did, and I got hooked. So I've been doing it now for 35 years, and I really enjoy it. And as Ron can tell you, he and I have gone through some surgeries, some hurts, some bad stuff, but I always came back and started all over again. But that's because I enjoy it, and it helps me stay strong. So.
Well, Larry, what if you had some surgeries that really dramatically weakened you? Wouldn't you just have to stay home then?
No, I always came back. I always came back to the gym, and he knows I had some bad surgeries, so I did come back. You can't start off where you did initially. You have to work your way back up from the bottom, and that's what I've done. So.
You may remember when I first got done with my heart problems, the day I came back, you were there.
Yes, I was, yes.
And I had to use 150-pound assistance to do a pull-up. That really hurt. I was not happy with 150-pound assistance to do a single pull-up when I was doing weighted, like Larry and I have done for many years, with weights around our waist to increase our body weight when we were doing pull-ups. So we've both dug ourselves out of some pretty deep holes, and it'd be nice if it were just one hole. But it keeps, it's a continuous surprise. Oh, well, you've got a new condition that we're going to want to operate on, and that's going to make you weak, and we're going to tell you not to do anything for 8 weeks, and then you're going to dig yourself out of that hole. But as soon as you do, there may be something else, little injuries. And by the way, injuries, you think, well, if I'd just warm up, I wouldn't have injuries. If we'd just warm up, we wouldn't have injuries. That's baloney. You have injuries anyway. It's just a question of how you want to be injured. Do you want to be so weak that you're falling down and hitting your head and having a traumatic brain injury? Or do you want to have a sore lower back and go see your chiropractor every time you turn around like I do? How about you? What are your favorite injuries?
Oh, well, where do I start? I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, and one was from the powerlifting. I was trying to bench 330 pounds at a meet. That tore my shoulder up, and I've had a neck surgery, C5, C6, C7, had nerve damage. And then I had prostate surgery related to Agent Orange with all kinds of complications from that. But it was still, like I said, I just came back from it. I didn't want to stay home and sit and do nothing. I'm not a person who likes to sit in front of the TV all day long. So I come home. I don't do much walking like I used to because I got, from the radiation for the cancer, I got lymphedema in the left leg. So sometimes that leg will swell. So I kind of stay away from too much walking. So that's...
But I think if you followed his program in the gym, you would find that you had pretty good cardiovascular integrity despite not doing much walking. So there you go. There's a wide range of possibilities. And I said at 73, he's 78, by the way. He's still one of the most muscular men in the gym. And is there anything else I want to say that? Oh, so it comes to Kylie to do our summary for today. What have we learned today, Kylie?
Number 1, your hearing loss makes you 3 times more likely to fall. 2, 2, hearing loss and falls are highly related because what affects the hearing mechanism may also affect the balance mechanism since both live in the same fluid-filled chamber. 3, falling down may create other problems that signal an end to your independence and in some instances, your life. 4, even if you don't want to become more physically active, there are changes you can make that will lower your risk of falling. 5, if you exercise, it decreases the likelihood of falls and gives you better health outcomes. And 6, but lay out realistic goals that you might follow for the long run.
Let me say just a word about that one. In my book, I calculated how much time it takes me to stay in the condition I'm in. When you eat a lot of fresh vegetables, you go to the store a lot because they don't keep well. Spinach particularly gets really ugly pretty quick. You know, it turns into this gray amorphous mass of I don't know what that you can't eat. So you're at the store like every third day. And you say, well, the store is close to my house, and it's close to mine. But everything you do in life takes at least an hour and a half. I don't care what it is, you know. If I'm going to go out and get a drink at the drinking fountain, somehow I'll run into somebody and I'll be gone for an hour and a half. So you have to budget the time it really takes to do this. And so if you're going to eat well, it's going to take a lot of time because these vegetables take a lot of time. You know, they just fall apart on you so quickly. Red peppers, I find, do the same thing. You know, I get nice crisp ones and I think, okay, this one's going to last 3 days, got to get a new one. So there's that, the getting the stuff. Then there's the preparing the stuff. Unless you've got a stomach of cast iron, you really can't chew up a bunch of broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts without your stomach kind of rebelling a little bit, because that's a lot of shock to stomach with all those little pieces of sandpaper in there, essentially. So you're going to have to prepare those in some way. And then, you know, the next thing that happens is, oh my goodness, there's an E. coli scare in the spinach that you've been eating. Well, fortunately, I steamed mine, so I didn't get E. coli. But, you know, it takes time to do this vegetable thing. And it takes some experience, because if you do too much of it, like I said, your stomach will really rebel on you. Secondly, when I see advertisements that say, you can develop this body in 20 minutes a day, no, you can't. You might be able to get to the place where you're going to start doing that in 20 minutes, but you can't do it in 20 minutes a day. Even you'll say, well, I'm going to do it at home. Okay, are you going to do it in your suit? Well, no, I'm going to have to change. That's going to take a few minutes. And then I'm going to have to put on my workout outfit. That's going to take a few minutes. And geez, you know, I've got to get everything out of the way because I've got all this stuff on the floor that I've got to move so I can do that. Well, nothing takes 20 minutes. That's just not true. You got to figure your travel time to and from, or at least you're getting ready for it time if you're going to do it at home. It takes time. And then, okay, you're going to do 20 minutes of exercise. Great, I'm all for it. But then, are you really going to, for example, then, when what you're wearing, go to the doctor's appointment? Hopefully not. You're going to have to change into something else, and you may even want to take a shower. So all these things, this 20-minute idea is just baloney. And if you want to fail in a business, start thinking that you can do in 20 minutes what actually takes 2.5 hours, because you will fall apart in business if you do that. You have to accurately assess what it really takes to do this. And in my book, I showed 23 hours a week I am spending in physical fitness pursuit. How about you? How many hours a week do you figure?
Oh, I go to gym 5 days a week, probably an hour and 15 minutes each day in the gym. That's on most of the time, sometimes more.
20-minute travel time?
Yeah.
So 40, an hour and a half and 40, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Times 5, 10 hours, and that's just that. How about eating?
What do I eat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I eat pretty good. I think I do. I get up in the morning and I'll have 6 eggs, 2 yolks and 4 egg whites, a piece of toast and coffee. But then I'll bring my meal to the gym with me, which consists of rice, either broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts with chicken or tuna fish. And at nighttime, I do like steak, but I don't eat that as much as I used to. I'll eat a lot of chicken. That's chicken, baked potato, and vegetables. So that's basically what I eat. But before that, as you get older, your metabolism slows down, and I can't eat that like I used to. I used to eat 6-7 times a day. So I had to quit that as I got older. So that's what I usually eat every day.
I was going to say something. Oh, so yeah, you got 10 hours of gym contact. You've got probably 15 minutes getting ready for it, 15 minutes getting changed out of your gym stuff afterwards. So let's make that 2 hours and a half times 5 is 12 and a half hours, call it 13. And then you've got some food prep time, and you've got some food shopping time. So it adds up. You get to those 23 hours a lot quicker than you'd think. There's no 20 minutes a day. So if you really want to go there, you're going to be into it for a little more time. And that was what I had to say about that. Lois, how about you? How much time do you spend in your physical fitness program?
Oh, probably about 10 hours a week.
And talk to me about your diet.
Well, we cook, trying to use as few prepared things as possible. We start from, and my favorite dinner would be a stir fry with vegetables and the meat cooked together, and trying to drink more water. We both need help with that. And the other thing would be that we have definitely cut down on our carbs.
Well, it's impressive to me that you're saying probably you're doing at least 15 hours between food prep, and we didn't even take food shopping into account. You're probably at 20.
Jim cooks on Monday night. I get that hour off.
Yeah, but somebody had to bring the food in.
But we do that together.
Good. We'll see. But my point is, even at the second level of the pyramid, you're going to be into it for around 20 hours a week. And yes, if I didn't do this, I would probably be able to work more hours and make more money. But I'm not sure I would, actually. I'm not sure at 67 I'd be able to go at the speed I do. Of course, I have a little help with that. Kylie helps me go a lot quicker. But the point is, never underestimate what this top of the pyramid's like, because that's a formula for failure if you think it's going to take 20 minutes. But even as Lois is saying, you're probably looking at 20 hours, even if you're not at the very top of the pyramid. Now, another thing I might say is Larry and I complain from time to time, we're not as strong as we were back 15 years ago. In fact, I'm probably half as strong as I was 15 years ago. But the thing is, we were 4 times stronger than everybody else at that time, so now we're twice as strong as everybody our age. So while I don't like that, and I know you don't either, it beats the alternative. So, with that said, questions? Yes.
Get it out. If I don't get my exercise fix, I don't sleep well.
He said if he doesn't do his exercising, he doesn't sleep well. And boy, that's so true. And I also find that life's little irritations become bigger irritations. If, for example, every time I've had surgery, I've had to wait 8 weeks, and those little irritations become bigger irritations when you're not exercising. And yes, it does affect sleep, absolutely. You were going to say something?
So if you want help going on walks, I got a puppy recently. It's a little Shih Tzu. If I miss out on a walk, he is very irritated. So he has been a great motivator for me getting outside a little bit more. I do go to the gym to try to go 2 to 3 times a week. But he has gotten me outside a little bit more, walking around the block, and if we skip out because it's raining, he is very grumpy.
These things have a pedometer in them.
That's right. Mm-hmm. They can count your steps. His phone can count your steps. And people, I think your watch does too.
Yeah, the
And controls
watch,
her hearing aid to boot.
Yeah, well, I have to have my phone connected nearby in order for that to work. But the watch, the Apple Watch, it counts your steps. It also will do, if you fall down, it will send a text alert to a family member. So that's something that's very useful about the new Apple Watch, the new update. There is also a hearing aid out there that does fall detection. It's a Starkey hearing aid. And they too, if you fall down, it'll alert someone that you have fallen and you may need help.
But it's my sincere hope that you won't be going down that path, because that is not a good path. Lois, is there anything you want to say in closing to these folks? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share with them?
Well, there is another thing that Jim and I are just very fortunate. Oh, we have many things that we are very fortunate about, but we were able to buy a home that was specifically built for those over 55, which means the doors are wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair if necessary. There are the grab bars in the bathroom. All the halls are wider, and we just feel very fortunate to have that home.
How about you, Larry? You got any words of wisdom for these people? Take your pick.
If you can get your spouse to go work out with you, it's better to, get you more into it, working out with somebody. I've worked out with people for the last 43 years, and that's what I enjoy. And like he says, going to the gym, he knows he and I will BS a lot before we even start. So if you can work out with somebody, I think it makes it more interesting. So.
Yep.
I have to add, Jim goes to the gym with me all the time. Or I go with him.
And I find that gets me more motivated to go to the gym myself. If I do have a friend, okay, we're going to go at 7 a.m. Let's go. Well, now we've both made that commitment. And when we get up in the morning, we're both like, we really don't want to go. We got work, we got all this other stuff that we need to do. But if we're not there, our friend's there by themselves. So it kind of gives you an incentive to go because you made a commitment. So.
Yes.
But some of us are not extroverts and don't like the social part of it. So I go to the gym, which in the Mennonite Village, so I go to the gym at lunchtime when everybody else is gone. And I turn off my hearing aids and I have a book to read. Or I go walking by myself. So there are ways you can adjust. If I go in the early morning, everybody's there. And that's not a time that I enjoy.
I'm impressed by that last thing you said. If you go in the morning that everybody's there at the Mennonite Village, good for them. I mean, think about that. You're talking about people who are 70s, 80s, by and large, and that you can't get in the gym in the morning. Hooray.
I'm doing Wii bowling with a lady that's 99.
Yeah.
I just quit golfing a year or two ago.
My mother's 93. She bowls on 2 leagues. So all I can say about this is we really do have choices. Barring degenerative neurological diseases, there are choices we can make here that will really give you a whole lot better outcome. And, it goes without saying, we've talked about this for 32 years, treat your hearing loss too. There's some evidence that actually helps your balance too. So let's not avoid this idea of aging. Let's embrace it in a way that it has good news. It's not, I can't tell you that it's all going to be fun and games, but I can tell you that, and I was talking about one of my other friends who trained with me in Tucson for many years, despite all the problems we've had, all the health issues we've had, all the injuries we've had from crazy things we did, how much did you try to bench press? 330 pounds. And you may remember I said to you, our muscles can get bigger at this age, but I'm not sure we can get our joints stronger. But we've had our share of injuries, quite a few, but in the long run, it was totally worth it, and I wouldn't undo any of it. Would you?
No, we don't do any of it, no.
Yeah.
I would just go back to a point that you brought up about setting goals. There has to be very personal, intentional goals that fit you, not the masses.
Right. Yeah, that's why I like this pyramid that I made up. I think that I should publish this somewhere because it really shows what you need to do at each step if you want to do that, if you want to be that. Because it was true that Larry and I can't do everything we ever did in terms of strength. We're not too limited in the things that we could do back in our 50s and 60s now. So I'm of the opinion that we don't necessarily have to accept that we're not going to be able to do a whole bunch of. If you wanted to go on a mountain hike tonight, would you be able to do that?
Me? Probably not.
Oh, your leg.
My leg, yeah, because it swells.
If you had to shovel 2 tons of pea gravel around your house, would you be able to do that? Not in a day, but would you be able to do that?
Certainly, yeah, take my time.
So, that's why, yes.
So one more thing is, for me, it's important to get good eyewear.
Oh, thank you, yes.
Make sure your glasses work for you.
Sherry said, be sure your eyewear is good. And that was on the Mayo Clinic suggestions. They said, check your hearing, check your vision.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
I have a stupid thing. It's, you cannot always listen to your doctor. I was condemned not to wait to use more than 20 pounds weight for the rest of my life and not play squash anymore. Yep. Guess what I do?
Yeah, good.
Repeat that for everyone.
I play squash and I do.
He said you cannot necessarily listen to your doctor. He was told he could not lift more than 20 pounds for the rest of his life and to not play squash anymore, but that's what he does. And I was told that I had a 1 in 10,000 chance of living through my heart problems. And, well, with my cardiologist, like I said, I saw him a couple of weeks ago. He said, you're getting better, but I don't know why. And I said, well, I can tell you. I have a book out on it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is pertinent or not. I've realized recently that listening to high fidelity stringed instruments does something internally between the ears that I can't evaluate, but I feel much better. And that's all I can.
He was saying that he noticed that listening to orchestral music makes him feel better between the ears. And you need to take a look at the work of Dr. Nina Kraus at Northwestern University, because she has shown that actually something is happening very specifically. The functional MRI studies her group has done at the Feingold School of Medicine at Northwestern University shows that particularly playing music, enhances the connection between the bridge between the 2 halves of the brain called the corpus callosum. So it's actually rewiring the circuits in a more healthy way. So I'm not surprised you're saying that. There's good evidence that music therapy, and people who have Alzheimer's who can't remember anything can remember words to songs they haven't heard in 25, 30 years. It's amazing. We play Alzheimer's places every now and then with our little band. They can sing along with all the songs. They don't forget that. There's that music thing really stays with the brain even through adversity.
Ron, could I tell a Jack LaLanne story?
Yeah, yes.
I think I've come by this honestly. My grandmother had what was called a glamour stretcher, and it was a rubberized cord with a handle on each side, and you had a lifetime guarantee. I believe he replaced it free of charge for her 4 times, and my children thought the proper name for it was the grandma stretcher.
Yep. He also invented the hamstring curl machine and a variety of other things. He used to own the European health spas, if you remember those, and he invented a whole lot of weight equipment. Great guy. And to call him on the phone, you could hardly get him off the phone. You think, well, he's a famous TV star. He's not going to talk to me. Oh, you could hardly get him off the phone.
Any other questions? All right, so those of you who have come here before, you know that we normally meet from 3:30 to 5. Today we had to meet from 2:30 to 4 due to room changes. But what I wanted to know, we're working on our schedule for next year for these rooms at the hospital. How many of you guys prefer 2:30 to 4?
Yeah, I suspect that's probably a good.
Okay. How many prefer 3:30 to 5? Okay. Okay. Good to know. Because all right. Well, thank you very much for giving me that feedback, because that'll help build the schedule for next year. Next month, we will be in this room. I really hope this projector's fixed next month. But we will be here on December 12th. We are in this room from 3:30 to 5. And we'll be talking about why can't I understand speech when there is background noise. All right?
Now, oh, go ahead.
Pick up the flyer in the back if you are not on our mailing list. If you would like to be on our mailing list, you can certainly take one of these cards and write your address on the back up there. There's some pens up there, and I will add you to our mailing list, okay?
Those of you who have been coming to this meeting may know that I've been doing research on this subject of why some people with their hearing aids can score normally on this very difficult speech and noise test. They do as well as normal hearing people do. And I've been wondering why. And all of a sudden, along comes these people from the National Acoustics Lab who are in Australia, who has a centralized hearing healthcare system and a centralized hearing healthcare database. So they can look at thousands of people and see, why are you guys scoring normally on this test? And they came up with 3 things that absolutely helped clarify some questions I had, and just in time, by the way, because I'm presenting a paper on this subject in next week in Orlando about why people score normally on this test. And they came up with 3 things that we'll be talking about, and I think they'll surprise you. And also, they've certainly instructed me in terms of testing we'll want to be doing at our clinic that might show why you're having problems independent of your hearing loss. So, hope to see you all then, and thank you all for coming, and thank you to our presenters, and we'll see you next time.